Yorkshire, December 1817. Snow fell in thick silence over Tilsbury Manor, coating the ancient stone walls and frosted windows with winter's indifference. In the North Tower, behind glass panes that had not been opened in 2 years, Lady Venetia Rose Bancroft stood motionless, watching the world she could no longer touch transform into something beautiful and remote. At 24, Venetia had learned to measure time not in days or weeks, but in doses. 3 times daily the laudanum came. 3 times daily the world grew soft and distant, her thoughts like birds trying to fly through thick mist. The servants who brought her meals would not meet her eyes. The physician who came monthly would not hear her words. And her aunt, Lady Beatrice Ashworth, smiled with something that might have been satisfaction every time Venetia stumbled or slurred her speech. The snow continued to fall. Somewhere beyond these walls, beyond the locked door and the watchful maid, beyond the careful prison her uncle had constructed from her grief, the world continued. But for Venetia, time had stopped the moment her sister Daphne's neck had broken, the moment her father's heart had failed, the moment her tears had been declared evidence of madness rather than love. If stories of resilience against impossible cruelty move you, subscribe now. You will not want to miss what happens when the coldest heart in England discovers the warmest truth. The boundary dispute between Wycliffe Estates and Tilsbury Manor had existed for 3 generations, a tedious matter of stream diversion affecting mill operations that no one had bothered to resolve with any permanence. Marcus Julian Stanhope, Marquess of Wycliffe, had received Sir Mortimer Ashworth's invitation to a Christmas house party with the weary resignation of a man who understood that some social obligations could not be avoided without consequence. 2 days, he had told his secretary. 3 at most. Resolve the matter, return to London, resume the comfortable isolation that had served him well for 6 years. The journey from Derbyshire to Yorkshire took 2 days through snow that threatened to become impassable. Marcus travelled with his valet Graves, a man of 60 who had served the Stanhope family since Marcus was in leading strings and who knew better than to attempt conversation when his master's jaw held that particular set of tension. They arrived at Tilsbury Manor as dusk painted the snow blue and gold. The house rose before them, grey stone and mullioned windows, elegant in the fading light but somehow melancholic. Marcus noted the North Tower, dark except for a single window where lamplight flickered. Something about that isolated glow disturbed him, though he could not have said why. Sir Mortimer Ashworth greeted him in the entrance hall with the excessive warmth of a man trying too hard. He was 50, round-faced, with eyes that moved constantly as though calculating advantage in every interaction. His wife, Lady Beatrice, stood beside him, thin and sharp-featured, dressed in burgundy silk, the colour of stale blood, a choice that did nothing to soften her expression. "Your Grace, such an honour to have you under our roof," Sir Mortimer refused, gesturing for servants to take Marcus's greatcoat and gloves. "I trust the journey was not too arduous? The snow came earlier than expected this year." "The roads remain passable," Marcus replied, his tone carrying the polite disinterest he had perfected over years of navigating society's demands. "I appreciate your hospitality, Sir Mortimer. I hope we can resolve the stream matter without delay." Of course. Though no need to rush, Your Grace. Stay through Christmas, I insist. We have gathered a pleasant party. The Duke of Bedford arrives tomorrow, and several families from the neighbourhood. It will be quite festive." Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his chest that accompanied the word festive. Christmas had been Amelia's favourite season. She had loved every excessive, sentimental aspect of it. The decorations, the carolling, the gift-giving. After her death, Marcus had spent every Christmas since in London, working through parliamentary papers and pretending the date held no significance. Lady Beatrice smiled, thin-lipped. "We so rarely have the pleasure of such distinguished company, Lord Wycliffe. I sincerely hope the local society proves tolerable enough that we might be allowed to extend your visit." Something in her smile reminded Marcus of a cat contemplating a piece of valuable property. He nodded with carefully measured courtesy and allowed himself to be shown to his chambers. The room assigned to him faced south, with a view of the formal gardens now buried under snow. Marcus turned to the window and surveyed the gardens below as Graves unpacked his belongings, his reflection ghostly in the darkening glass. Below, servants moved like shadows, lighting lamps, carrying wood for fires. The house bustled with the preparations for Christmas entertaining that Marquess had spent years avoiding. He turned from the window and caught sight of the North Tower, visible now from this angle. That single lit window still glowed. As he watched, a figure moved past it. Pale, ethereal, there and gone so quickly he might have imagined it. "Graves," he said quietly. "Do you know who occupies the North Tower?" His valet paused in the act of laying out evening clothes. "I made inquiries of the housekeeper, my lord, as is customary. She became evasive when I asked about that wing, said it was closed for the winter. Yet there is clearly someone there." "Yes, my lord." The housemaid let slip something about the late Earl's daughter, but the housekeeper silenced her most firmly. Marquess frowned. He had known the late Earl of Tilsbury slightly, had met him at White's several times. A decent man, by all accounts, though prone to melancholy after his wife's death from consumption. The Earl had died 2 years ago, Marquess recalled, of heart failure. There had been daughters, he thought, though he could not remember details. It was not his concern. He was here to resolve a property dispute, nothing more. Yet as he dressed for dinner, as he descended the grand staircase and made polite conversation with the other guests assembled in the drawing room, his thoughts kept returning to that isolated tower window and the pale figure that moved behind it. Dinner was interminable. 18 at table, the food elaborate, the conversation carefully orchestrated by Lady Beatrice to showcase her social connections and refined taste. Marquess sat at Sir Mortimer's right, a position of honor he neither wanted nor could refuse. The Duke of Bedford, jovial and slightly deaf, held court from the other end. Between them, various members of the local gentry performed the ritual dance of ambitious hospitality. "Such a tragedy about my husband's niece," Lady Beatrice announced to the table during the third course, her voice pitched to Carrie. "Poor dear Venetia, quite mad, you know. Grief does terrible things to weak minds." Marquess's fork stilled halfway to his mouth. "Lost her sister in a riding accident," Lady Beatrice continued with practiced sympathy. "Could not accept it, I'm afraid. Wept for months, refused to eat, screamed that she wished she had died instead. Most disturbing. And then her father passed soon after, the strain of it all too much for his heart. The shock sent Venetia completely into melancholia of the severest nature." "How dreadful," murmured Lady Harwood, a matron in purple satin who clearly relished the Gothic drama of it. "Where is the poor creature now?" "We keep her comfortable in the north wing," Sir Mortimer said heavily, as though the burden of such care weighed upon him terribly. "Under constant supervision, of course. Dr. Pettigrew from Bath attends her. He assures us she is quite beyond recovery, but we do our Christian duty." The conversation moved on to other scandals, other tragedies. Marquess found himself unable to participate, his mind fixed on a single detail. Wept for months. Screamed that she wished she had died instead. When Amelia had died, Marquess had wanted to rage, to weep, to tear the world apart with his bare hands. Instead, he had stood silent through the funeral, handled the arrangements with cold efficiency, and retreated into work that demanded nothing of his shattered heart. Society had approved. Duty over emotion, control over chaos. Had he been a woman, would they have called it madness? Would they have locked him away and called it Christian duty? After dinner, the ladies withdrew and the men remained for port and cigars. Marquess endured an hour of tedious conversation about crops and hunting before excusing himself with the claim of fatigue from travel. He made his way upstairs, but instead of returning to his chamber, found himself drawn toward the north wing. The corridor grew darker, colder. This section of the house received little attention. Dust lay thick on side tables. Portraits of Bancroft ancestors gazed down from walls in need of cleaning. At the end of the hall, a door stood closed. Not locked, he discovered, but guarded by a maid who dozed in a chair beside it. The woman started awake as Marquess approached, eyes going wide with alarm. "My lord, I mean your grace, you should not be here. This wing is closed." "I lost my way," Marquess said smoothly. "The house is unfamiliar. I was seeking the library." "That would be the south wing, your grace. I will fetch someone to show you." "That will not be necessary." He studied the closed door, then the maid. She was young, perhaps 20, and frightened. You stand watch here every night? Yes, Your Grace. Lady Beatrice's orders. Miss Venetia must not wander. She gets confused, you see. Dangerous to herself. I see. Marquess paused. Does she receive visitors? Only Dr. Pettigrew monthly, and Lady Beatrice when she remembers. It is kinder not to disturb her, Your Grace. She does not know anyone anymore. Marquess thanked her and withdrew, but not before he heard something from beyond that door. A sound so soft he might have imagined it. A woman's voice, not confused or incoherent, but singing. A lullaby, perhaps, or a hymn. The melody was heartbreakingly clear, perfectly pitched, utterly sane. He returned to his chamber deeply unsettled. Something was wrong at Tilsbury Manor, wrong in ways that went beyond property disputes and boundary lines. But it was not his concern. He was not here to rescue damsels or right social wrongs. He was here to sign papers and leave. Yet sleep would not come. Marquess lay in the unfamiliar bed and thought of his sister, of how she had loved to sing, of how her voice had filled Wycliffe Hall with warmth that had died with her. He thought of the figure in the tower window, isolated and alone. He thought of grief, of how it had nearly destroyed him, of how only his position and gender had protected him from the fate that apparently befell women who mourned too deeply. He was not rescuing a damsel. He was rescuing the part of himself that had been denied the right to mourn. Mourning brought no clarity, only fresh snow and the prospect of more enforced socializing. Marquess dressed and descended to the breakfast room to find most of the party already assembled. Sir Mortimer held forth about the planned festivities. Lady Beatrice presided over the tea service with brittle cheerfulness. Guests ate and chattered and performed the elaborate choreography of country house entertainment. Marquess helped himself to kidneys and toast and took a seat near the window, hoping his demeanor would discourage conversation. It did not work. Lady Harwood, apparently emboldened by daylight, launched into questions about his estates, his time in Parliament, his views on the poor laws. He answered with minimal politeness, attention divided between his plate and the snowy landscape beyond the glass. It was then that he saw her, a figure in grey moving through the formal garden, accompanied by a maid. Even at this distance, even bundled in a cloak against the cold, Marquess recognized something ethereal about her movements. She walked slowly, as though each step required immense concentration. The maid hovered close, one hand extended as if ready to catch her should she fall. "Ah," Lady Beatrice said from across the room, following his gaze. "You have spotted our invalid. Dr. Pettigrew insists on daily air when weather permits. He believes fresh air calms the disturbed mind." "Does it?" Marquess asked quietly. "I cannot say it makes much difference, but the physician knows best, of course." Marquess set down his fork. "I believe I will take some air myself. The morning is quite fine." Before Lady Beatrice could respond or offer to accompany him, he stood and exited through the French doors that led to the terrace. The cold struck him immediately, sharp and clarifying. He descended the stone steps and followed the path into the garden, boots crunching on snow. The woman in grey had paused before a dormant rosebed, gazing down at the buried plants with an expression Marquess could not decipher from this distance. The maid noticed him first, stiffening with alarm. "Your Grace, Miss Venetia should not be disturbed. Lady Beatrice's orders." But Venetia had already turned. For a moment their eyes met across 6 feet of snowy garden. Marquess felt as though he had been struck. Her face was pale, thin, with dark circles beneath eyes that should have been vacant or confused, but were instead startlingly, painfully aware. Intelligent grey eyes that looked at him and saw him, truly saw him, in a way that made his breath catch. "Forgive me," he heard himself say. "I did not mean to intrude upon your walk." She did not speak. Perhaps she had been told not to speak to strangers. Perhaps the laudanum he suspected stole her words. But those eyes held his for another heartbeat before the maid stepped between them. "Come, Miss Venetia, we must return inside. You have had your air." The woman in grey allowed herself to be led away, docile as a child. But as she passed, Marquess caught her scent, lavender and the distinctive bitterness of opiate underneath. And in that brief moment when she turned her head, he saw her lips move, shaping words too soft to hear. He stood alone in the snow long after they had gone, unsettled in ways he could not name. That afternoon, Sir Mortimer insisted on reviewing the boundary dispute in exhaustive detail. They spent 3 hours in the library with maps and surveys and property deeds dating back to 1763. Marquess, who could have resolved the matter in 30 minutes, found himself raising objections and requesting additional documentation. The stream diversion, he declared, required surveyor reports, multiple consultations, perhaps an engineer's assessment of the mill operations. Sir Mortimer, transparently delighted by Marquess's unexpected thoroughness, agreed to everything. "Stay through Christmas, Your Grace. We shall have everything properly documented. No need to rush such important matters." "Indeed," Marquess said slowly, studying a map that showed the manor grounds in detail, including the North Tower. "No need to rush at all." Over the following days, Marquess established a careful pattern. He attended meals, participated in the expected social rituals, played cards in the evening, and discussed business matters with Sir Mortimer at length. But between these obligations, he explored. The house was large, with many corridors and rooms that saw little use. He discovered the conservatory, a glass structure attached to the south wing that housed tropical plants and provided a retreat from the cold. He found the music room, where a pianoforte sat silent under dust cloths. And he learned the rhythms of the household, the movements of servants, the schedule that governed life at Tilsbury Manor, including the schedule that governed Lady Venetia Rose Bancroft's existence. She was allowed 1 hour daily in the library, between 2 and 3 in the afternoon, supervised by the same nervous maid. This information came from Mrs. Davies, the housekeeper, a woman of perhaps 60 with iron-grey hair and eyes that held secrets. Marquess encountered Mrs. Davies in the corridor outside the library on his 3rd day at Tilsbury Manor. She was directing 2 footmen in the moving of a heavy bookcase, and when she saw him, something flickered in her expression. Not surprise. Recognition, perhaps, or calculation. "Your Grace," she said quietly, after the footman had departed. "Forgive me, but might I have a word? In private?" This was highly irregular. Housekeepers did not request private audiences with Marquesses. Marquess should have declined with polite firmness. Instead, he followed her to a small sitting room off the main hall. Mrs. Davies closed the door and turned to face him. In the thin winter light from the window, he could see the toll that worry had taken on her face. "I have served the Bancroft family for 40 years, Your Grace. I knew Lady Venetia from her birth. I knew her mother, God rest her soul, and her sister, Miss Daphne, and the late Earl, who was as good a man as ever lived." Marquess waited, sensing this preface led somewhere important. "Lady Venetia is not mad," Mrs. Davies said flatly. "She grieves. Deeply, yes, painfully, certainly, but there is nothing wrong with her mind. There never was." "That is a serious accusation, Mrs. Davies." "I know, Your Grace, and I would not make it lightly or to just anyone. But I have watched you these past days, the way you look at the tower, the questions you ask about the household. You are a man who sees things, I think, a man who understands what it is to grieve." Marquess felt something cold settle in his chest. "What exactly are you telling me?" "Sir Mortimer is not a good man, Your Grace. He married Lady Anne's younger sister for her connections. When the Earl and Miss Daphne died, Lady Venetia inherited £45,000. Sir Mortimer became her guardian. Within 6 months he had convinced Dr. Pettigrew to declare her incompetent. On what grounds? Excessive grief, melancholia, risk to herself and others. All lies, Your Grace. She wept, yes. Refused to eat for a time. Screamed that she wished she had died instead of Daphne. But that is not madness. That is a sister who loved deeply and lost everything." "Why are you telling me this?" Mrs. Davies met his eyes steadily. "Because Lady Venetia deserves an advocate. Because Sir Mortimer controls her fortune and has been withdrawing funds for 2 years without proper authorization. Because the laudanum he insists she take 3 times daily serves only to keep her docile and confused. And because you, Your Grace, are powerful enough that even Sir Mortimer cannot simply dismiss your observations. You risk much telling me this. I am an old woman who has watched a crime unfold in silence for too long. Dismiss me if you must, But at least you will know the truth." Marquess stood very still, absorbing this information. Everything Mrs. Davies said aligned with his own observations, the unease that had plagued him since arriving, the isolated tower, the supervised walks, the way Lady Beatrice spoke of Venetia's madness with such satisfaction, the laudanum, administered regularly, keeping its victim just confused enough to seem disturbed. The truth, he knew, was that the gentry seldom looked beyond their own comfort. In the age of non-interference, few would risk their reputation to question a knight's Christian duty over a mere matter of a grieving woman. "What would you have me do?" "See her, Your Grace. Speak with her when her mind is clearest, between doses. Judge for yourself whether she is mad or merely imprisoned. And if I agree she is sane, what then? I cannot simply accuse her guardian of malfeasance without proof." "I have proof," Mrs. Davies said quietly. She withdrew a small bundle of papers from her apron pocket. Letters Lady Venetia wrote in the first months before the laudanum stole her clarity. Her journals that I saved from being burned. Financial records I copied from Sir Mortimer's study showing the withdrawals. Dr. Pettigrew's credentials, which are fraudulent. He failed his examinations at the Royal Mineral Water Hospital but claims he passed. Marquess took the papers, weighing them in his hand. "Why did you not take this to the magistrate?" "Because I am a servant, Your Grace. Who would believe me against a knight of the realm? But you are a Marquess. Your word carries weight. If you declare Lady Venetia sane, even Sir Mortimer cannot easily contradict you." It was manipulation, skillful and desperate. Mrs. Davies was using his rank and his apparent interest to achieve what she could not accomplish alone. Marquess should have refused. This was not his battle. He had come to Yorkshire to sign papers, not to embroil himself in family dramas and accusations of fraud. But he thought of Amelia, of how grief had nearly destroyed him. He thought of Venetia's eyes in the garden, intelligent and aware and trapped. He thought of how society judged women's emotions, how female grief was pathologized while male grief was simply ignored. "I will need time," he said finally, "to review these documents, to observe Lady Venetia myself, to gather my own evidence." "The Christmas ball is in 12 days, Mrs. Davies said urgently. "Sir Mortimer plans to have Lady Venetia appear briefly before guests. He expects the laudanum to make her confused and disoriented, providing witnesses for his incompetency petition. If you are going to act, it must be before then." 12 days, Marquess nodded slowly. "Then I suppose the boundary dispute has become significantly more complex. I will need to extend my stay." Mrs. Davies's expression transformed with relief. "Thank you, Your Grace. You cannot know what this means." "I hope," Marquess said quietly, "that I do not come to regret this." But even as he spoke the words, he knew it was too late for regrets. He had already decided in that moment in the garden, when grey eyes had met his, and he had seen not madness but recognition. Perhaps even hope. The library became his observation post. Marquess positioned himself there every afternoon between 1:45 and 2, appearing to be absorbed in reading or correspondence. Without fail, at precisely 2 o'clock, the door would open and Lady Venetia would enter, accompanied by her maid. The maid would guide Venetia to a chair near the fire, select an approved book, a collection of sermons or a volume of improving poetry, and then retreat to a corner where she could observe without interfering. Venetia would hold the book, turning pages at irregular intervals, sometimes seeming to read, more often gazing into the flames. For 3 days, Marquess simply observed. He noted how her hands trembled slightly, a side effect of laudanum, how her eyes would lose focus and then sharpen again, as though she fought for clarity, how she sat with perfect posture despite the drug's sedating effects, a lady's training too deeply ingrained to abandon even in imprisonment. On the 4th day, he spoke. "I wonder," he said conversationally, not looking up from his own book, "if you might recommend something worth reading. The selection here seems rather limited to moral improvement." The maid stiffened. "Your Grace, Miss Venetia does not converse. Dr. Pettigrew forbids it. Overstimulation of the mental faculties is dangerous." "I see. Forgive me." Marquess returned to his book, but not before he saw Venetia's hand tighten on her volume. A small movement, barely visible but significant. The next day he tried again. "This weather," he remarked to the room at large. "Quite oppressive. I imagine spring must be beautiful here." The maid started to protest, but Venetia spoke. Her voice was soft, slightly slurred, but the words were clear. "The rose garden in June." "Miss Venetia, you must not tire yourself," the maid said quickly. But Venetia continued, as though she had been saving these words, rationing them carefully. "My mother planted them, cabbage roses, damask. They bloom against the south wall." "It sounds lovely," Marquess said gently. "It was, Your Grace, before the change. Before her sister died, before her father's heart failed, before her uncle locked her away and called her mad, and stole her inheritance and her freedom and her life." "Miss Venetia, that is quite enough," the maid said firmly. "Come, your hour is complete." As they left, Marquess heard Venetia whisper, so softly, only he could catch it. "Thank you." That evening, Marquess sought out Mrs. Davies again. "The laudanum. When is it administered?" 8 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 8 in the evening. The afternoon dose usually takes effect around 1:30, which is why her library time is scheduled for 2. Sir Mortimer prefers her docile during the hours guests might encounter her. "Could the doses be substituted without detection?" Mrs. Davies's eyes widened. "You mean to give her something harmless instead?" "Chamomile tea has a similar color and bitter taste. If prepared correctly, it could pass for laudanum tincture. The maid who administers it is loyal to Lady Beatrice. She would report any substitution immediately. Then we must ensure she does not discover it. How is the medicine stored?" "In Miss Venetia's room, in a small cabinet. The maid measures and delivers each dose." Marquess thought for a moment. The dilution would be total and immediate. Mrs. Davies would risk replacing the medicine completely for the morning dose, hoping the maid would not measure it precisely. What if the laudanum itself were diluted, gradually over days until the doses contained more chamomile than opiate? The maid would notice nothing amiss, but Lady Venetia's mind would begin to clear. "It could work," Mrs. Davies said slowly. "But Your Grace, if we are discovered, I will be dismissed without reference, and you will have made a powerful enemy in Sir Mortimer." "I am a Marquess, Mrs. Davies. Sir Mortimer is a knight married to the sister of a dead earl. Let him try to make an enemy of me." The substitution began that night. Mrs. Davies enlisted her niece, a girl of 18 who worked in the stillroom and could be trusted absolutely. Together they prepared chamomile tincture that matched the laudanum's appearance and taste. Under cover of darkness, they accessed Venetia's room while the night watch dozed and began the careful dilution. 10% the first night, 20% the second. By the end of the first week, the morning and evening doses were 50% harmless tea. The afternoon dose they left at full strength, since that was when Venetia was most likely to be observed by guests. The change was gradual, but unmistakable. Marquess watched it unfold during those library hours. Venetia's eyes grew clearer, her hands steadied. Her words came easier, less slurred, more precise. She began to truly read the book she held, not just stare at pages. And she began to speak to him. Brief exchanges that anyone listening would judge harmless, but which Marquess understood were acts of extraordinary courage. "You are the Marquess of Wycliffe," she said one afternoon, her tone almost normal. "I am. I heard you in the hall, days ago. Your voice was kind to the maid who guards my door. She seemed frightened. Everyone here is frightened." Venetia turned a page of her book without reading it. Of Lady Beatrice's temper. Of Sir Mortimer's disappointment, of losing their positions. "And what are you frightened of, Lady Venetia?" Her answer came quietly. "That I will forget. That the medicine will finally take everything, and I will wake one day truly mad, unable to remember Daphne's laugh or my father's voice, or the woman I was before grief gave them an excuse to lock me away." The maid, dozing in her corner, stirred but did not wake. Marquess kept his voice carefully neutral. "Grief is not madness." "No," Venetia agreed, "but it is convenient to call it so, especially when £45,000 hangs in the balance." So she knew. Despite the drugs, despite the isolation, she understood exactly what had been done to her. The knowledge settled something in Marquess's chest. Whatever else Venetia Bancroft might be, she was not a victim who needed rescuing. She was a prisoner who needed freedom, and there was a profound difference. 12 days, he said very softly. Until the Christmas ball. Venetia's hand stilled on her book. He plans to display me. I heard Lady Beatrice discussing it with Dr. Pettigrew. They intend to give me extra laudanum that evening, so I will appear confused before witnesses. The magistrate will attend. The physician from Bath, several peers from London, all to provide evidence for the incompetency petition. And what would happen, Marquess asked carefully, if you appeared that evening clear-minded instead? For the first time in their conversations, Venetia smiled. It was a small, fragile thing, but real. I imagine, she said slowly, that would be quite inconvenient for my uncle. Indeed, most inconvenient. Their eyes met, and in that moment an understanding passed between them. Not alliance, not yet, but possibility. The recognition that perhaps, just perhaps, there was a way out of this carefully constructed prison. Why? Venetia asked. Why would you involve yourself in this? You owe me nothing. You barely know me. Marquess was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of years of carefully controlled grief. I had a sister, Amelia. She died 6 years ago in childbirth. She was 21. I am sorry. After her death, I wanted to rage, to weep, to refuse to accept it. Society permitted me coldness, retreat into duty. Had I been a woman, would they have locked me away too? Yes, Venetia said simply. They would have. Your grief was allowed expression through silence, mine through isolation. But neither of us were permitted to simply mourn, were we? To miss the people we loved without judgment or diagnosis? No, we were not. The maid woke then, ending their conversation. But as Venetia rose to leave, she paused beside Marquess's chair. Her voice was barely a whisper, meant only for him. To love so deeply that the loss nearly destroys one. That is not weakness, my lord. It is merely the terrible cost of devotion. After she had gone, Marquess sat alone in the library for a long time, those words echoing through the empty places in his heart. The conservatory became their second meeting ground. Marquess discovered that Venetia was permitted to walk there in the mornings, when most guests were still abed or at breakfast. The glass walls and lush plants provided both privacy and plausible deniability. If anyone happened upon them, they were simply two people admiring the exotic ferns. The afternoon doses remained at full strength, keeping Venetia visibly impaired when Lady Beatrice expected her to be. But the morning and evening doses were now almost entirely chamomile. Venetia's mind cleared more with each passing day, though her body still bore the marks of 2 years of confinement. She was too thin, her movements uncertain, her stamina limited. But her thoughts were sharp, her words precise, her spirit clearly unbroken despite everything they had done to her. Tell me about the Duke of Bedford, Marquess said one morning as they walked slowly between the orange trees. He is jovial and mostly harmless. Sir Mortimer cultivated his attendance to lend credibility to the ball. A duke's presence makes any gathering significant. And Lady Harwood? A gossip of the highest order. Whatever happens at the ball, she will ensure all of Yorkshire knows within a week. Excellent. Marquess plucked a small orange from a tree, turning it in his gloved hands. Then we must ensure what happens is memorable. You have a plan. The beginnings of one. Mrs. Davies has provided me with substantial evidence of your uncle's fraudulent withdrawal of funds. £12,000 withdrawn from your trust over 2 years. Dr. Pettigrew's fraudulent credentials. Forged documents. My solicitor has reviewed everything and confirms it would hold weight in Chancery. Venetia stopped walking, one hand gripping a stone column for support. You had your solicitor review it? I sent him the documents by express. The wait for his reply felt interminable. He returned his opinion yesterday. Lady Venetia, you have grounds not merely to escape your uncle's guardianship, but to bring criminal charges. They will say, I am mad. Her voice was shaking, not with weakness, but with something that might have been hope or terror or both. That is the entire point of the ball, to provide witnesses. Let them try. When you appear before those witnesses clear-minded and articulate, when I publicly attest to your sanity and present evidence of your uncle's crimes, who will believe their carefully constructed narrative? You would do that? Publicly. Marquess met her eyes. In the soft morning light filtering through glass walls, he could see the toll 2 years of imprisonment had taken, but he could also see the woman she had been and would be again. Intelligent, resilient, stronger than anyone had credited. I would, he said simply, if you trust me to do so. Trust? Venetia laughed, a sound without humor. I trusted my father's judgment when he named Sir Mortimer as my guardian. I trusted Dr. Pettigrew when he said the medicine would help. I trusted that surely someone would notice, would question, would help. And no one did. No one did. She turned away, gazing at the snow-covered grounds beyond the glass. Why should I trust you, Lord Wycliffe? A man I have known barely a week, who appeared in my life by chance, who has no obligation to me whatsoever. It was a fair question. Marquess moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Outside, the winter landscape stretched white and endless. You should not trust me, he said quietly. You should not trust anyone after what you have endured, but I am asking you to anyway. Not because I deserve it, not because I am noble or good, but because I understand what it is to have grief weaponized against you. Because I see you, Lady Venetia, truly see you in ways this family refuses to, and because I believe you deserve freedom, dignity, and justice. What if I am not strong enough? What if the laudanum has damaged me too much? What if I appear at the ball and fail? Then we will find another way. But I do not believe you will fail. You have survived 2 years of hell and retained your sanity. That requires strength most people will never possess. Venetia was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. What do you need me to do? On Christmas Eve, refuse the afternoon dose. The maid will insist. She may even attempt to force you. But you must refuse. Without that dose, by evening your mind will be completely clear. The earlier doses were already mostly chamomile. Your body may rebel. You may feel ill, anxious, uncertain, but you will be fully yourself. And then you walk into that ballroom as Lady Venetia Rose Bancroft, daughter of the late Earl of Tilsbury. You hold your head high, you speak clearly, and you let me handle the rest. You make it sound simple. It will not be simple. It will be terrifying, but I will be with you. You will not face them alone. Venetia turned to face him fully. Why are you really doing this, Lord Wycliffe? The truth. Marquess considered lying, offering some noble platitude about duty or justice, but she deserved honesty. Because when Amelia died, part of me died too. I locked it away, sealed it behind ice and duty and careful control. I told myself it was strength. I convinced myself that grief was a weakness that must be conquered. But watching you, seeing your courage in the face of such cruelty, I realize I was wrong. Grief is not weakness. Grief is love with nowhere to go. And perhaps by helping you reclaim your life, I can begin to reclaim mine. The confession hung between them, raw and true. Venetia reached out slowly, as though movement still required conscious thought after so long drugged and confined, and placed her hand on his arm. Then we will reclaim them together, she said softly. Our lives, our right to grieve, our futures. Marquess covered her hand with his own. Through their gloves, he could feel her trembling. Not from fear, he thought, but from determination. Christmas Eve arrived with brilliant sunshine that made the snow sparkle like diamonds scattered across the landscape. The house hummed with the rush of servants and the nervous energy of anticipation. Servants hauled greenery and hung wreaths. Musicians arrived from York to rehearse in the ballroom. The kitchen produced an endless stream of delicacies. By evening, 200 guests would fill Tilsbury Manor for the social event of the season. Marquess spent the afternoon in careful staging. He positioned allies strategically. Mrs. Davies would ensure the blue gown he had commissioned, delivered secretly days earlier, reached Venetia's room. Graves would station himself near the ballroom entrance to prevent interference. His solicitor, arrived from London that morning, would have all documentation ready. The magistrate from York, unaware he was about to witness something other than a mad woman's public humiliation, had taken a glass of excellent brandy in the library and expressed pleasure at attending such a distinguished gathering. Everything was prepared, everything except the woman at the centerpiece of this most cruel of spectacles. At 3 in the afternoon, Marquess found himself pacing his chamber, anxiety an unfamiliar companion. What if Venetia could not refuse the dose? What if the maid forced it? What if 2 years of laudanum had indeed damaged her beyond recovery? What if he had miscalculated, endangered her further, made everything worse? A soft knock interrupted his spiraling thoughts. Graves entered, his expression carefully neutral. "Mrs. Davies sent word, my lord. Lady Venetia refused the afternoon dose." Marquess felt his heart steady. "And?" The maid attempted to insist. Lady Venetia told her that if she tried to force the medicine, she would scream until every guest in the house came running to investigate. The maid retreated to consult with Lady Beatrice. Good. What happened? Lady Beatrice decided it did not matter. One missed dose would not clear Lady Venetia's system before evening. She expects the morning dose and the accumulated effects of 2 years will be sufficient to ensure confusion. Lady Beatrice is about to be very disappointed. Indeed, my lord. Mrs. Davies also reports that Lady Venetia is currently being dressed for the evening. She has accepted the blue gown. Marquess nodded, not trusting his voice. It was happening. There was no retreat now, no second guessing. In a few hours, everything would change one way or another. The ballroom at Tilsbury Manor had been transformed. Hundreds of candles cast golden light across polished floors. Evergreen garlands draped the walls, filling the air with the scent of pine. The musicians played softly as guests arrived, the wealthy and titled of Yorkshire society, dressed in silks and jewels, eager for entertainment and gossip in equal measure. Marquess stood near the terrace doors, glass of champagne untouched in his hand, and watched the gathering with careful attention. The Duke of Bedford held court by the fireplace. Lady Harwood had already begun circulating, her sharp eyes missing nothing. The magistrate from York spoke with a local squire about property law, unaware he was about to witness its violation on spectacular scale. Sir Mortimer moved through the crowd with oily satisfaction, playing the generous host. Lady Beatrice sparkled in emerald silk and diamonds that had likely been purchased with Venetia's stolen inheritance. They presented a picture of respectability and success, the caring guardians who shouldered the burden of a mad relative with grace. At 9 o'clock, the music paused. Sir Mortimer stepped to the center of the room, raising his glass. My friends, thank you all for joining us this Christmas Eve. Your presence honors us greatly. Before we continue our festivities, I ask your patience with a brief and somewhat delicate matter. The room quieted, 200 guests focusing their attention with the avid interest of those scenting scandal. As many of you know, my wife and I have had the care of my niece, Lady Venetia Bancroft, since the tragic deaths of her father and sister. It has been a difficult burden, as Lady Venetia suffers from melancholia of a most severe nature. Her condition is such that she requires constant supervision and medical care. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lady Harwood leaned forward avidly. Dr. Pettigrew, who has attended Lady Venetia these 2 years, has recommended that we seek legal confirmation of her incompetency so that her affairs may be properly managed for her own protection. To that end, we have invited several distinguished witnesses here tonight to observe Lady Venetia, so that you might judge for yourselves the necessity of such measures. This was theatre, Marquess realized. Sir Mortimer had choreographed this entire evening, turning Venetia's alleged madness into public spectacle to serve his own ends. Rage, cold and controlled, settled in Marquess's chest. I ask your kindness and understanding as my niece joins us briefly. The ballroom doors opened. Lady Venetia Rose Bancroft entered alone. She wore no grey, no mourning, no invalid's shapeless gown. Instead, she moved across that threshold in blue silk, the colour of summer sky. Her dark hair dressed simply but elegantly, her posture that of a lady entering a ballroom for the first time in 2 years. No maid hovered. No one steadied her elbow. She walked with careful grace, head high, hands steady. The room seemed to hold its breath. Marquess saw the moment Sir Mortimer realized something was wrong. His face flushed, then paled. Lady Beatrice's satisfied smile froze into something ugly. Dr. Pettigrew, standing near the refreshment table, actually choked on his wine. Venetia paused in the center of the ballroom, 200 pairs of eyes fixed upon her. Marquess watched her hands clench once, briefly, in the silk of her skirts. Then she lifted her chin and spoke. "Good evening." Her voice carried clear and calm and completely, unmistakably sane. "Forgive me if I am somewhat out of practice with social gatherings. It has been 2 years since I attended one." Sir Mortimer found his voice. "Venetia, my dear, you should not have come down without your maid. You are not well. Let me escort you back upstairs where you will be more comfortable." "I am quite comfortable here, Sir Mortimer, and see no need to retire so soon." She turned slowly, gaze moving across the assembled guests. "I believe you wished these good people to observe me, to judge my condition. I am happy to oblige." "This is not appropriate," Lady Beatrice snapped, all pretense of sympathy abandoned. "Venetia, you are overwrought. The excitement has confused you." "I am not confused, Aunt Beatrice. For the first time in 2 years, I am perfectly clear." Marquess chose that moment to step forward. Every eye in the room followed his movement like a single, astonished organism as he crossed to Venetia's side. He bowed, formal and deliberate. "Lady Venetia, I am honored to see you this evening." Relief flashed in her eyes there and gone. "Lord Wycliffe, the honor is mine." Sir Mortimer's voice rose with desperation. "Your Grace, I must apologize for my niece's condition. She is clearly having one of her episodes. Dr. Pettigrew will confirm that she is not in her right mind." "Will he?" Marquess's tone could have frozen water. He turned to face the assembled guests, positioning himself slightly in front of Venetia. Protective, but not possessive. An ally, not a captor. "I have spent 3 weeks in this house. During that time, I have had occasion to observe Lady Venetia on multiple occasions. I have conversed with her extensively. And I must tell you all, in the presence of these witnesses, that I find her to be of sound mind, articulate conversation, and appropriate emotion." Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Sir Mortimer sputtered. "Your Grace, you cannot possibly have conversed with her. She is kept in isolation for her own protection." "Perhaps you should ask yourself, Sir Mortimer, whose protection that isolation truly served." The room had gone completely silent. Lady Harwood looked as though Christmas had come early. Marquess continued, his voice cutting through the shocked quiet like a blade through silk. "Lady Venetia has been imprisoned in the North Tower of this house for 2 years. She has been administered laudanum 3 times daily, far in excess of any therapeutic dose. She has been denied visitors, companionship, and basic liberty. Why? Because she grieved the loss of her sister, because she wept for her father, because she dared to feel emotions that her guardians found inconvenient." "This is outrageous," Sir Mortimer blustered. "Lady Venetia is mad. Dr. Pettigrew will confirm it. The physician from Bath examined her just last month and concurred with the diagnosis." "Dr. Pettigrew," Marquess said coldly, "failed his examinations at the Royal Mineral Water Hospital. His credentials are fraudulent. As for the physician from Bath, I have a letter from the Royal Mineral Water Hospital itself confirming they have no record of anyone by that name ever attending Lady Venetia." Dr. Pettigrew began edging toward the door. Marquess's valet Graves stepped smoothly into his path, blocking escape. "You lie!" Lady Beatrice's voice was shrill. "You have been deceived by her. She is cunning in her madness." "Is she?" Marquess turned to Venetia. "Lady Venetia, would you be so kind as to answer some questions for our assembled witnesses?" Venetia met his eyes, drew a shaking breath, and nodded. When she spoke, her voice remained steady, despite the tremor in her hands. "I will answer truthfully, my lord. What is today's date?" "December 24th, 1817. Who is the current Prince Regent?" "George Augustus Frederick." "What is the capital of France?" "Paris." "Can you recite for us any piece of literature you choose?" Venetia was silent for a moment. When she began to speak, her voice carried the melody of memory. "She walks in beauty, like the night, of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that is best of dark and bright, meet in her aspect and her eyes. The words echoed through the ballroom. Byron, Marquess recognized. Appropriate, given the poet's own complicated relationship with madness and society's judgment. "Does that sound like a mad woman to you?" Marquess asked the room at large. "Or does it sound like a woman who has been systematically drugged and isolated so that her guardian could steal her inheritance?" "Lies!" Sir Mortimer's face had gone purple. "You have no proof of such accusations. This is slander of the worst kind." "I have proof." Marquess produced a sheaf of papers from his coat. "Financial records copied from your own study, showing £12,000 withdrawn from Lady Venetia's trust without authorization over the past 2 years. Forged documents, supposedly signed by Lady Venetia, approving those withdrawals. And statements from Mrs. Davies, your own housekeeper, attesting to Lady Venetia's sanity and your deliberate campaign to keep her drugged." The magistrate pushed forward through the crowd, hand extended for the papers. Marquess gave them to him without hesitation. "These are serious allegations, Sir Mortimer," the magistrate said slowly, scanning the documents. "Very serious indeed." "They are fabrications. This man is clearly besotted with Lady Venetia and attempting to undermine her rightful guardians." "I am not besotted," Marquess said, though even as he spoke the words he wondered if they were entirely true. He was a man of logic, and logic alone demanded he defend the innocent. Yet the sound of her voice made the blood race in his veins. "I am simply a man who believes that grief is not madness, that female emotion is not disease, and that no one deserves to be imprisoned for mourning those they loved." He turned back to Venetia. She stood straight despite exhaustion that must be overwhelming, despite the weight of 200 stairs, despite 2 years of torture masquerading as care. Pride surged through him, unexpected and fierce. "Lady Venetia," he said formally, loudly enough for all to hear, "would you do me the honor of dancing?" It was a calculated move. If Venetia was truly mad, she would be unable to execute the complex steps of a country dance. If she was drugged, she would stumble. If she was the helpless invalid her guardians claimed, she would need to refuse. Venetia understood immediately. She placed her trembling hand in his. "The honor would be mine, Lord Wycliffe." The musicians, sensing drama of historic proportions, launched into a waltz without being asked. It was slightly scandalous, the waltz still considered daring in some circles, but Marquess needed a dance that would keep Venetia close, that would allow him to support her without it being obvious. They moved onto the floor. Every eye in the room tracked their progress. Marquess placed one hand at Venetia's waist, felt her hand settle on his shoulder. They began to turn. She stumbled once in the first minute, exhaustion and 2 years of confinement taking their toll. Marquess steadied her seamlessly, murmuring, "I have you. Always." "Why?" she whispered as they turned. "Why risk so much for me?" "Because you deserve justice. Because grief is not madness. Because I see you, Venetia. Truly see you." Tears glittered in her eyes, but did not fall. They completed the dance, every step a declaration, every turn a refutation of the lies that had held her captive. When the music ended, the ballroom erupted not in applause but in shocked, avid conversation. Lady Harwood was already composing the letters she would write, Marquess was certain. The magistrate approached, expression grave. "Sir Mortimer, I will need you to accompany me. There are questions that must be answered regarding these financial irregularities." "This is absurd. I am a knight of the realm. I demand—" "You may demand nothing, sir. These documents suggest criminal activity. Lady Venetia's competency will be evaluated by independent physicians, not your convenient friend Dr. Pettigrew. If these allegations prove true, you will face charges." Sir Mortimer's bluster collapsed. Lady Beatrice's face had gone ashen. Dr. Pettigrew attempted to slip away, but found himself blocked by several large footmen whom Marquess had carefully positioned earlier. The Duke of Bedford approached, jovial face serious for once. "Lord Wycliffe, if half of what you say is true, this is monstrous. Lady Venetia will have my full support in any legal proceedings." Other voices joined his. The tide had turned. Society, always quick to judge madness, was equally quick to judge villainy when presented with evidence. Within minutes, consensus formed. Lady Venetia had been wronged. Sir Mortimer was a scoundrel, Dr. Pettigrew a fraud, and the Marquess of Wycliffe a hero for exposing it all. Marcus found the adulation exhausting and faintly hypocritical. Where had these defenders been for the past 2 years? Why had no one questioned, no one investigated, no one cared until it became dramatic entertainment at a Christmas ball? But Venetia needed them now, needed their support and validation, so he accepted their congratulations with cold courtesy and kept her close, a silent shield against the overwhelming attention. By midnight, the ball had dissolved into chaos. The magistrate departed with Sir Mortimer in custody. Lady Beatrice locked herself in her chambers, reportedly hysterical. Dr. Pettigrew was discovered attempting to flee on horseback and was apprehended in the village. The Duke of Bedford declared himself Venetia's protector until proper arrangements could be made. Mrs. Davies wept openly with relief, and Marcus found himself in the conservatory with Venetia, both of them needing escape from the carnival their confrontation had created. She sank onto a stone bench, exhaustion finally overwhelming her. Marcus sat beside her, close but not touching, giving her space to process everything that had happened. "It is done," she said softly. "After 2 years, it is done. The beginning is done. There will be legal proceedings, examinations by physicians, questions and gossip and attention. I know, but I will face them free, clear-minded. That is everything." Marcus studied her profile in the moonlight filtering through glass walls. "What will you do now? Where will you go?" "I do not know. The manor is mine, I suppose, once the courts settle everything. But I am not certain I can live here. Too many ghosts, too many memories. You could come to London, stay with my aunt, the Dowager Marchioness. She is formidable and kind in equal measure. She would sponsor you, help you re-enter society properly." "Why?" Venetia turned to face him. "You have already done so much. You owe me nothing more. Perhaps I do it for myself as much as you. Perhaps helping you escape your prison helps me escape mine." "The ice, you mean, the stone Marquess?" "You heard that sobriquet. Mrs. Davies mentioned it, said you were known for your coldness. I find it hard to reconcile with the man who has shown me such compassion." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "When Amelia died, I locked myself away. Not in a tower, not with laudanum, but with duty and work and careful control. I told myself it was strength. I convinced myself that feeling nothing was better than feeling everything. But watching you fight for your right to grieve, to feel, to be human, I realized I was wrong. Grief is not weakness, and numbness is not strength. What is it then? Survival, perhaps. I am only certain that it was not strength." Venetia reached out slowly, placing her hand over his. "Then perhaps we can discover the answer together. I do not know how to live in the world any longer, Lord Wycliffe. I do not know how to trust or hope or believe in the future. But if you are willing to help me learn, perhaps I can help you learn as well." "Learn what?" "That you are allowed to miss your sister, that grief does not expire on a schedule convenient to society, that there is strength in vulnerability and courage in feeling." Marcus turned his hand, lacing his fingers with hers. It was improper, intimate, too much too soon. But after tonight, after everything, propriety seemed less important than truth. "I cannot promise to be easy company," he warned. "I have spent 6 years perfecting coldness. It will not disappear overnight." "I cannot promise to be easy either. I have days where grief overwhelms me, where I wake certain the tower still holds me, where fear paralyzes me. Recovery is not linear." "Then we will be difficult together." Venetia laughed, a real laugh, the first he had heard from her. It transformed her face, showing him the woman she had been before loss and cruelty had tried to break her. Is this what courtship looks like among the aristocracy? Shared trauma and mutual dysfunction? "I have no idea. I have never courted anyone before," he admitted. "Nor have I been courted. We are both remarkably inexperienced for people of our age." "Perhaps," Marcus said slowly, "that is not a disadvantage. Perhaps it means we can write our own rules." "And what rules would those be?" "Honesty. No pretense, no games, no hiding behind social masks. Patience. Time to heal, to grow, to discover who we are beyond our grief, and freedom. The right to grieve, to feel, to be imperfect without judgment. "Those are good rules," Venetia said softly. "I accept them." They sat together in the conservatory as midnight passed into Christmas morning. Two people who had survived their own kinds of imprisonment, beginning to imagine what freedom might look like. The weeks that followed were not easy. Legal proceedings dragged through January as magistrates sorted truth from lies. Physicians from London and Edinburgh examined Venetia, declared her unequivocally sane, and expressed horror at her prolonged laudanum regimen. Sir Mortimer was tried and convicted of fraudulent withdrawal of funds, sentenced to 7 years in debtor's prison. Lady Beatrice, though not criminally charged, found herself completely ostracized from society. Dr. Pettigrew's fraudulent credentials led to his imprisonment as well. Venetia discovered that recovery was not a straight line, but a jagged path of good days and terrible ones. There were mornings she woke screaming, certain she was back in the tower. Afternoons where crowds overwhelmed her and she had to retreat to quiet spaces. Evenings where grief for Daphne rose like a tide and threatened to drown her. But Marquess was there, not hovering, not smothering, but present. He understood, in ways few others could, that healing required both patience and space. When Venetia needed silence, he sat with her without demanding conversation. When she needed to talk, he listened without trying to fix or diminish her pain. When she needed solitude, he gave her that too, trusting she would return when ready. February brought the first thaw. Venetia began venturing into society under the protection of Marquess's aunt, the Dowager Marchioness of Wycliffe, who proved exactly as formidable and kind as Marquess had promised. The ton received her with a mixture of sympathy and avid curiosity. Some genuinely cared. Others simply craved social intelligence for their letters. Venetia learned to distinguish between them. March brought an unexpected gift. Using her recovered inheritance, Venetia established the Bancroft Foundation for the Protection of Vulnerable Women. Its mission was to provide legal assistance, medical review, and safe refuge for women unjustly confined or labeled mad. She hired solicitors, physicians, and advocates. She rented a house in London to serve as a sanctuary, and she personally reviewed every case that came to her attention. "You are turning your pain into purpose," Marquess observed one evening as they reviewed foundation documents in his study. "Is that not what you have done? Turned your grief over Amelia into determination to ensure I received justice?" Perhaps we are both learning that suffering can be transformed, not eliminated, not forgotten, but given meaning. April brought Marquess's formal courtship. He called at proper hours, brought appropriate gifts, observed every convention society demanded. But between the structured visits, they created their own rituals. Morning walks in Hyde Park, where they spoke honestly about fears and hopes. Afternoon rides where they could escape scrutiny. Evening conversations in which they shared memories of the siblings they had lost, keeping Amelia and Daphne alive through remembrance. "Do you think they would have liked each other?" Venetia asked one evening. "Your Amelia and my Daphne? I think they would have conspired to matchmake us far earlier, sparing us both years of lonely misery, and been insufferably smug about their success. Absolutely insufferable." They smiled together, the bittersweet pleasure of imagining a meeting that could never happen. May brought the proposal, not in a ballroom, not before witnesses, but in the rose garden at Tilsbury Manor. Venetia had finally returned to her family home, ready to confront the ghosts there. The roses her mother had planted were blooming, cabbage roses and damasks splashing pink and white against the south wall, just as Venetia had once described. Marquess knelt in the garden where Venetia had once been imprisoned, surrounded by beauty that had endured despite neglect, and offered her not rescue but partnership. "I do not ask you to marry me because I pity you. I do not ask because you owe me anything for what happened at Christmas. I ask because over these past months, I have watched you transform pain into strength, grief into purpose, imprisonment into liberation. You are the bravest person I have ever known, Venetia. And I want to spend my life ensuring you never doubt your worth, never face darkness alone, never struggle to be heard or seen or valued." Venetia looked down at him, tears on her cheeks but smiling through them. I still grieve Daphne. There are still days where the loss overwhelms me. I cannot promise you constant happiness or easy companionship. I still grieve Amelia. I have days where ice returns and I struggle to feel anything at all. I cannot promise you warmth or ease either. But I can promise you honesty, patience, partnership, and love that does not ask you to be anything other than who you are. Even when who I am is difficult. Especially then. Venetia knelt as well, meeting him eye to eye among the roses. Then yes, Marquess, I will marry you. Not because you saved me, but because you see me. Not because I need you, but because I choose you. They married in May of 1818 in the small church in Beckwith village, the same church where Daphne was buried. It was a modest ceremony, nothing like the grand society wedding they might have had. But Venetia wanted it small, intimate, free from the performance that had marked so much of her life. Mrs. Davies wept joyfully throughout. The Dowager Marchioness declared it the most sensible wedding she had ever attended. The Duke of Bedford gave a toast that was both jovial and surprisingly moving, and Venetia wore blue, the color she had worn when she reclaimed her freedom, the color she would forever associate with the night everything changed. The months that followed were not perfect. Perfection, they both learned, was neither possible nor desirable. Instead, they built something real. A marriage based on shared understanding of loss. A partnership that made space for grief alongside joy. A home where feelings were permitted, where difficult days were weathered together, where healing happened slowly and imperfectly, but genuinely. Venetia's foundation grew, helping dozens of women escape situations similar to hers. She became known not as the Mad Lady of Tilsbury, but as a fierce advocate for those society most often failed. Marquess, watching her work, found his own ice continuing to thaw. He would never be warm the way some men were, but he learned that coldness could coexist with compassion, that control could shelter rather than isolate, that there was strength in allowing himself to feel. Christmas of 1819 found them at Wycliffe Hall, hosting a modest gathering of friends and family. As evening fell, Marquess found Venetia in the library, standing before the fire, staring into flames, with that expression he had learned meant she was visiting memories. "Daphne," he asked quietly, "and Amelia. I was thinking how they would have loved this. The snow, the decorations, the warmth." Marquess moved to stand beside her, slipping one arm around her waist. Venetia leaned into him, accepting comfort without shame. "I got you something," he said, producing a small package. "Well, two somethings. The first was a journal bound in blue leather, empty pages waiting to be filled. For whatever you need to write, feel, or remember, your thoughts are not madness. They are you." "It is perfect," Venetia said softly, running her hand over the smooth leather. "And this." The second package was smaller, a miniature portrait in a silver frame. Marquess had commissioned it from descriptions he had provided, working with an artist for months. "So, Amelia can be here with us, remembered in joy, not just sorrow." Venetia took the portrait with trembling hands. The artist had captured what Marquess remembered most: Amelia's smile, the particular tilt of her head when she laughed, the warmth in her eyes. It was not perfect, could never be perfect, but it was a remembrance made real. "Thank you," Venetia whispered. They stood together before the fire, and then Venetia reached into her pocket and produced her own gift. Another miniature, this one of Daphne, commissioned with similar care. For the same reason, so she is here with us too. Marquess took it carefully, studying the young woman Venetia had loved enough that losing her had nearly destroyed everything. He saw the resemblance to Venetia in the shape of her face, but Daphne's expression held something lighter, younger, untouched by tragedy. "They are here," Venetia said softly, "in our memories, in the way we love, in the fact that we refuse to forget them even when remembering hurts." "Yes," Marquess agreed, "they are." They set both miniatures on the mantel, Amelia and Daphne side by side. Then Marquess pulled Venetia close, holding her as she cried, mourning and healing simultaneously. Later, as guests gathered for Christmas dinner, as toasts were raised and carols sung, Marquess and Venetia stood at a window, watching snow fall over the grounds of Wycliffe Hall. Both wore mourning lockets. Daphne and Amelia carried always close to their hearts. But they also wore wedding rings, symbols of futures built on honest foundations. "Do you ever regret your involvement?" Venetia asked. "Embroiling yourself in such scandal?" "Never." "Do you regret accepting the assistance of a stranger?" "Never." They stood together as night deepened and snow continued to fall, two people who had survived grief's cruelest edges, learning that love did not replace loss, but created space alongside it. That healing was not forgetting, but integrating. That the strongest marriages were built not on perfection, but on shared humanity. "I love you," Marquess said quietly. "Grief and all, difficult days and all, exactly as you are." "I love you too," Venetia replied. "Ice and all. Closed heart learning to open and all, exactly as you are." Behind them, the party continued. Before them, the future stretched uncertain, but no longer lonely. Together, they had reclaimed what others had tried to take. Their right to grieve, their right to heal, their right to live fully, feeling everything, surviving together. The snow continued to fall over Wycliffe Hall, beautiful and cold and cleansing. And in the window, reflected in glass, two figures stood close. Their shadows merged into one, proving that even the darkest imprisonment could be transformed into the brightest freedom when courage met compassion and survival became something more than simply enduring. The next morning, Christmas Day, Venetia woke early. For a moment, panic seized her. Unfamiliar room, unfamiliar bed. Then Marquess's arm tightened around her waist, pulling her back against his chest, and memory returned. She was free, she was loved, she was home. "Bad dream," he murmured, still half asleep. "Just disorientation. It passes more quickly now." "Good." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "Merry Christmas, Lady Wycliffe." "Merry Christmas, husband." They lay together, watching pale winter light strengthen beyond the windows. Outside, the world was clean and white and new. Inside, two people who had survived their own kinds of darkness held each other and chose to face whatever came next together. There would be difficult days ahead, days where grief ambushed them, days where old wounds ached, days where the world felt too large or too small or too heavy. But there would also be joy, laughter, purpose, partnership, and the knowledge that they had earned their happiness through survival, through courage, through refusing to let cruelty have the final word. Later that morning, they joined their small gathering for Christmas breakfast. The Dowager Marchioness commanded the table with benevolent authority. Mrs. Davies, invited as honored guest rather than servant, beamed with pride. Several carefully chosen friends filled the remaining seats, people who understood that true celebration included space for complicated emotions. "To absent loved ones," the Dowager Marchioness said, raising her glass, "may they be remembered with love, not just with loss." "To absent loved ones," the table echoed. Venetia felt tears sting her eyes but did not hide them. Marquess's hand found hers beneath the table, steady and warm. They sat together, surrounded by chosen family, and allowed themselves to mourn and celebrate simultaneously. After breakfast, they walked the grounds despite the cold. Marquess showed Venetia his favorite places on the estate. The ancient oak where he had played as a child, the pond that froze perfectly for skating, the folly where Amelia had once staged elaborate tea parties for her dolls and her patient older brother. "She would have adored you," Marquess said, as they stood before the folly, wind whipping snow around them. "Your strength, your refusal to accept injustice, your determination to transform suffering into purpose. And Daphne would have adored you, your quiet kindness, your willingness to see beyond society's judgments, your courage to feel despite every pressure to remain cold." They returned to the house chilled but content. The remainder of Christmas Day passed in comfortable ritual, games in the afternoon, reading by the fire, a feast in the evening, music and conversation, and the companionable silence of people who need not perform for each other. As the year drew toward its close, as 1819 prepared to become 1820, Marquess and Venetia found themselves once again in the library, their refuge and sanctuary. The fire burned low. The house had quieted. Outside, stars pierced the winter sky with brilliant clarity. "What do you hope for?" Venetia asked. In the new year? Continued healing, for both of us. Expansion of your foundation. Perhaps, if you are willing, to start planning for children. I would like that. Children who are taught that feelings are not weakness, that grief is love's shadow, that surviving trauma makes them strong, not broken. Yes, exactly that. They sat together in comfortable silence, contemplating futures that had once seemed impossible. The clock struck midnight. 1819 became 1820. A new year, a new decade, new possibilities. Thank you, Venetia said softly. For what? For seeing me when I was invisible, for hearing me when I was silenced, for believing in my sanity when everyone else called it madness, for giving me back my life. Marquess turned to face her fully, framing her face with his hands. You gave yourself back your life, Venetia. I merely removed some obstacles. Everything else, every ounce of courage it took to walk into that ballroom, to face your accusers, to rebuild your world, that was you. Never doubt that. Then thank you for reminding me I was worth saving, because there were times locked in that tower, drugged and isolated, when I began to believe them, when I thought perhaps I was mad, perhaps I deserved it, perhaps grief really had broken me beyond repair. It had not. No, it had not. But I needed someone else to see that truth before I could see it myself. They kissed then, soft and gentle and full of promise. Not passion's fire, but something steadier. Partnership, choice, the decision to continue building something real from the rubble of what had been destroyed. The years that followed brought growth and change. The Bancroft Foundation expanded beyond London, establishing chapters in Edinburgh, Bristol, and Dublin. Venetia's work gained recognition, though not without controversy. Some praised her advocacy. Others declared her too outspoken, too unconventional, too willing to challenge established medical and social authority. She bore criticism with the serene indifference of one who knew her purpose. Marquess's coldness never fully vanished, but it transformed into something more nuanced. He would never be effusive or publicly emotional. But those who knew him well, who looked past the stone facade, saw the warmth underneath. He became known in Parliament as a fierce advocate for reform, particularly regarding the treatment of vulnerable populations. His speeches were not passionate, but devastatingly logical, impossible to dismiss. Together they created a life that honored their pasts while building toward their futures. They had 2 children, a daughter born in 1821 who they named Anne Amelia, and a son in 1823 named Thomas Bancroft. Both children grew up understanding that grief was part of love's legacy, that remembering hurt, but forgetting hurt worse. That family included those who had gone before. Every Christmas they gathered at Wycliffe Hall. Every year, Amelia and Daphne's portraits held places of honor on the mantle. Every December 24th, Marquess and Venetia told their children the story of the Christmas ball, where justice had been served and freedom won. Not a fairy tale where a prince saved a princess, but a true story of courage, advocacy, and the power of refusing to let cruelty define one's story. On Christmas Eve 1829, exactly 12 years after that fateful night at Tilsbury Manor, Marquess and Venetia stood once again in the conservatory at Wycliffe Hall. Their children were asleep upstairs, exhausted from the excitement of the season. The house held guests, but for this moment they had stolen away to remember. 12 years, Venetia said softly. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes like a lifetime ago. It is both, Marquess agreed. The past stays with us even as we move beyond it. I still have difficult days, still wake sometimes certain I am back in the tower, still feel panic when rooms grow too crowded or when I smell laudanum's distinctive bitterness. I still struggle to feel, still retreat into work when emotions threaten to overwhelm me, still fight the instinct to ice over everything rather than face it. But we survive them, the difficult days, together. Yes, together. They stood surrounded by tropical plants and winter stars, 2 people who had found each other in their darkest moments and chosen to walk toward light as partners. Not perfect, not without scars, but free and loved and home. Thank you, Marquess said, echoing the gratitude she had offered him years before. for teaching me that feeling is not weakness, for showing me that survival requires courage I never knew I possessed, for being patient with my ice while I learned to thaw. Thank you for seeing me, for believing me, for proving that one person's willingness to act can change everything. They kissed, a familiar comfort now, years of marriage transforming passion into something deeper, steadier, more enduring. Behind them, through the glass walls, snow began to fall. Before them, futures stretched, uncertain as always, but no longer lonely. In the house, their children dreamed. In the cemetery near Beckwith village, Daphne rested beneath roses that Venetia planted yearly. In the churchyard at Wycliffe village, Amelia's grave bore fresh flowers that Marquess brought monthly. The living continued forward, carrying their memories like lockets worn close to the heart. As midnight approached, as Christmas Eve became Christmas morning, Marquess and Venetia returned to the house together. They checked on sleeping children, ensured the fires were banked and the doors bolted, performed the domestic rituals that marked their lives. Then they retired to their chamber, closing out the world for a few precious hours. "I love you," Marquess said as they lay in darkness, Venetia's head on his shoulder, his arms around her. "I love you," Venetia replied. Simple words, but weighted with everything they had survived and everything they had built. Love that had grown, not despite their traumas, but alongside them. Love that made space for grief and joy simultaneously. Love that proved healing was possible even when scars remained. Outside, the world shifted toward dawn. Inside Wycliffe Hall, two people who had once been prisoners, one of ice and one of towers, slept peacefully, held by freedom they had earned and love they had chosen. The snow continued to fall, soft and relentless, covering the landscape in white. Tomorrow would bring Christmas celebrations, family gathering, joy and remembrance intertwined. But tonight, in the quiet hours before dawn, there was only peace. The peace of survival transformed into thriving. The peace of pain acknowledged, but not allowed to destroy. The peace of knowing that even the darkest imprisonment could be overcome when courage met compassion. And in the conservatory, forgotten but significant, two miniature portraits sat side by side on a small table. Amelia and Daphne, forever young, forever remembered, forever proof that love survives even death, and that the greatest tribute to those we have lost is living fully in their absence. "Merry Christmas," the house seemed to whisper. To all who grieve, to all who survive, to all who transform their pain into purpose and their sorrow into strength. Merry Christmas, and may you find peace. We are deeply grateful you chose to spend this time with us. If this story of survival, courage, and the transformative power of genuine compassion moved you, please subscribe, like, and share it with your loved ones. Your support helps us continue telling stories that honor resilience, challenge injustice, and celebrate the profound strength it takes to reclaim one's life from cruelty. Together, we keep these stories alive.